All right, and for our final panel of the day, would love to welcome on stage some industry superstars that are going to talk about the future of digital health, innovation, AI, and what's next. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. The great news is that we are still here. And the great news is that it has been a very engaging day. The bad news is that we will end up soon. So thanks for still being here with us. Thanks for the energy. And it's really my pleasure to have the last panel of the day. So, and also, I feel that I personally have my head full. So I'm very curious to see how the panels also add to our day and how much reflections of the day will contribute to our future and how that will build up for the upcoming days, weeks, and years ahead. So this is a panel considering that, where we are today and where we're going to be in a few years' time. So I would ask my panelists to introduce themselves and adding up to the introduction to add what are you excited about on digital health today? Would you start?
Hi, everyone. Miruna Sasu. I am President and CEO of COTA. COTA is a company that works on real-world data and solutions. We obviously have an AI agent, as I think everyone else does. Ours works. It's great. Really, really well. But actually, I've spent most of my career in large pharma, starting at Bristol Myers. And in fact, my office was like upstairs from here. And then subsequently went to J&J, led clinical trial feasibility, data science, and ended up at COTA. So what am I excited about? I am very, very excited that I think many of us sitting here today in 3 years, our landscape is going to be completely different. It will change. And we think about uncertainty and what AI is going to do for us. And I think we're going to sit here talking about what is the next wave of evolution. So that's really exciting to me.
Mariann.
Hi, everybody. Mariann Micsinai-Balan. I head the data science function within global drug development here at BMS. I am personally very excited about the richness of data that we have, right? Whatever we can get through digital health, wearables, and really mining that richness of data so that we can have better medicines to our the right patient at the right time. I am also excited about the technology, right? Because it's changing so fast and how we put together the data richness and the amazing forward technology that we have here to achieve the same results.
Great. Milind?
Yes, hi. I'm Milind Kamkolkar. I'm currently a venture partner at RA Capital. RA Capital is a $14 billion assets under management hedge fund with significant investments across biotech, healthcare, tech-enabled services. I run the AI investing portfolio as well as New Co-Creation. The most recent company I created was with a woman you all may know of, Dr. Janet Woodcock, when she left the FDA. I keep joking with her, we're two geriatrics building a startup company. Like, how does that work? But needless to say, we actually just exited the company today. We sold it to a very large tech player. In literally 6 months, it was the fastest exit with only 4 months of development time and 6 people on the project. And we sold it for several million. My background, very quickly, is a former geneticist, worked in the Genome Project, worked very early on in the startup career, both in the Bay Area as well as in Boston. But then transitioned over to, like many of you here, to Big Pharma. Was the head of BI and AI and behavioral science in the newly formed digital medicine unit that I co-designed with David Epstein at that time. And then went to Sanofi to become the first chief data officer in the pharmaceutical industry at enterprise level, working with my dear friend Matteo over there, where we had a bunch of different things to do. But More recently, I've spent the last 4 years building companies. BMS actually invested in one of the companies that I co-founded called Paradigm, but I've raised a little under $500 million for the companies that I've done in the last 4 years, and continue to build in this space. I will summarize what I'm most excited about. As someone who's literally built their entire career in AI, it is going short on AI and going long on people. I actually think AI is so grossly commoditized now, it is nonsense. And it is not an investable entity. It is simply a tool. It will remain a tool, a powerful tool, but nevertheless a tool for everyone to 10x themselves. So if you're not using it today, you probably will not have a job tomorrow. Let's be crystal clear on that.
Thank you. Dan, we had the pleasure to hear from you a little earlier today, but now if you can summarize what you are most excited about from everything of the landscape that we are in 2025, what would you say?
I'm frantically downloading an AI app so I can keep my job. Good God.
It's a good idea too.
So what I didn't say, because I was in kind of a rush before, is that I'm a psychiatrist by training, and I practice an analytic technique. I'm probably more Lacanian than anything, and I'm fascinated, I think, by a slightly different angle on the same question, which is, we've had AI for a really long time. AI outperformed, Ted Shortliff, who was one of my mentors when I was getting my informatics degree, had designed AI that was fed by punch cards that you'd use forward chain logic to outperform doctors at antibiotic selection. The timing wasn't good. You had to punch in all the patient data on punch cards and feed that to the machine, but ultimately its predictions were better. There's nothing really new right now, but I'm fascinated as someone who is consumed by the fact that we have a language brain and a non-language brain. And that reveals itself when you look at psychiatric illness. There are psychiatric illnesses I can absolutely talk you out of, and there are ones I can't talk you out of at all, and they're not delineated by the DSM definitions. There are components of your anxiety that I can cure with my voice, not like in this session. I do have a credit card reader with me if you want to meet me later, and because I'm going to catch up. And there are things that I can't, and we try to use medicines for those things. The problem is we started to use medicines for all the things, and we stopped doing good psychotherapy. I think that the fact that stochastic statistical models can trick us into thinking that they're using language is going to actually spell a movement forward for science where we stop trying to use language to do science. Language necessarily papers over reality, and it fills in intricacies with generalities. And we talk about the sloppiness of language all the time. Language is always sloppy. Language never describes a true underlying ontological reality. And I think that reality, as the value of language goes down because of the commoditization of language-based, language-generating AI, we'll come to realize that language isn't actually where it's at for discovering and describing reality. Where you see real progress in medicine, it's where we've stopped naming things, right? If you look at the success of oncology, we stopped calling it breast cancer and we started describing it based on measurable tumor markers, and we got better at treating it. And I think that has to happen across all systemic illness. We got to figure out a way to stop talking about signs and symptoms as they are described in language, because again, the stochastic statistical model can do it almost as well as we can. What's the use? And start moving toward non-human readable, non-human describable measurement. And so maybe the increasingly crappy sentences that are generated by the Gen AI models being fed by their own crap will ultimately lead us out of that valley.
So then you are making the right segue for the question that I had next, which is on next side to the excitement, what are the biggest concerns? And when I was hearing your answer, I was hearing some concerns as well. So do you want to nail a little further on that? And then I would like to hear the rest of our panel on that aspect. So the concerns on the adoption, the concerns on what AI is offering, the concerns on the journey ahead.
I mean, I think it's I wouldn't say it's so much, I mean, it's a concern because it's not, I beg to differ a tiny bit, which is that I don't actually think it's that useful. I think it's useful if you're a high school student who wants to not have to write your own essays, because it's going to write a decent high school essay. It's not going to write anything inspiring. No new idea is coming out of this thing, right? It can't do new ideas. And when you take something that's even a little anti-hegemonic, try this. It's a fun experiment. I have, in fact, played with these things a tiny little bit. Try to go find some idea that's anti-hegemonic, but that you believe to be true based on evidence you've encountered as you've searched on a topic you really care about. Try to get the AI to say that. It won't. It will keep telling you, well, some people might say that, but what we really know is because it's statistical. And if the bulk of people are saying a certain thing, the AI will say that thing. So again, totally useful if you want to crib your notes for a bad speech, checks notes, or like if you want to write like a middling essay. But if you're actually trying to generate things of meaning, it's just not there.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I mean, look, I get some fun opportunities in the career that I've had. You know, one of them was teaching at Stanford Medical School and teaching at Harvard Medical School, and being on the advisory board of DeepMind. And one of the interesting things in those places is when you meet these phenomenal low ego, you know, polymaths, you know, you get this fascinating experiment in terms of what defines good, right? So a benchmark in AI or a benchmark in ML is probably guesswork in biology as we know it today, right? Particularly if we're thinking about target selection, indication selection, or probability of success. I mean, that is as much art and science. And one of the most fascinating discussions that I'm extremely optimistic about, actually, is the human form factor. I think Jen was alluding to that. I think human form factor engineering and the notion of UX applied to AI and what those new interfaces will be. When we think about it from first principles, let me give you a very simple example. When our phone buzzes in our pocket, we get a buzz, and it just elicits this manic response to have to check your pocket, right, or something like that. But you know what we never factored in is temperature in that. What if your phone could get a little warm? What if your phone could get a little cold? What if, you know, your phone actually wasn't a phone, but was probably just an ID card in your pocket that resembled something like a device, like a phone? And I think this is where in the conversations that I've had, I mean, even most recently with Johnny Ive, right, it was fantastic because this is a guy who literally defined UX to the most extraordinary availability. Now, whilst he didn't share a lot of things, and I was genuinely trying not to piss him off because I really wanted to learn from him, you know, what I found most interesting in those spaces is the ability, as you correctly pointed out, for language models to iterate on known entities. But what language models are doing that we typically call hallucinations are actually novel pathways of emergent patterns of computing. And my team and I have actually gone through some of this work where we tried to model how computers think and tried to map the pathways of why it almost doesn't matter whether the answer is right or wrong. What's more important is there an actual brain that's functioning here, or is it simply an orchestration of stats that's happening? And I think there's music in that.
Absolutely, that's totally for you, Mariann.
I think there
what
is
would you like to say?
more than music. There is even poetry. So if you haven't read the book I Am Code, it's actually a fascinating book about, you know, AI writing more than code, actually poetry as well. But I think going back to the concern, so I definitely, you know, agree with the more pessimistic view as well, but I definitely see a little bit more optimism in how AI can definitely help us operationally. And in terms of science, you know, I still believe that there are a lot of silos to break down. So how do we move from, you know, mining this data with all the amazing emerging, you know, computer algorithms, finding a signal and taking that signal through that rigorous process and making it a regulatory digital biomarker endpoint, right? That's true impact. And I think we need to bridge that gap of, oh, I'm mining this data and I find a signal, or AI finds a signal, whatever, right? And how we make that impactful to be a digital biomarker that is regulatory accepted, and it really makes a huge impact for all of us.
Miruna, do you want to add to that?
So I'm going to entertain you a little bit, I think, but one of my concerns is that we're not concerned about these things. I think we should, utilize what we have to break forward real use cases. So do I think it's awesome today? No. What do I compare it to? Probably a toddler. Would you agree? Right? And so what do you have to do? You have to teach, and you have to work, and you have to progress, because I believe that human health is really important. That's why I worked for pharmaceutical companies. That's why I do what I do today. I believe that chronic disease is something that can happen if human life is extended. And we see some of the biggest killers, right? Cardiovascular disease, oncology. Next is going to be neurology. Because the older you get, something else is going to break, right? And so the brain, as you very well stated, is one of these really complex things. How can we utilize, AI is such a sort of like a trigger word in my mind, but how can we utilize technology and what we have at our fingertips to break through some of the barriers? And I'm not saying use that alone, but I would agree also that if you're not using AI today, you've got to start, right? You're going to be optimized in that way. You're going to be able to use it as a force multiplier. So how can we utilize AI? How can we all as a community push it forward, and technology as a whole, to be able to break away from perhaps the methodologies that we typically used, that were invented in like the 1930s, and bring forward new methodologies that will help us prevail over chronic disease, over any disease at all, to extend human life, right? So I think that for me, that's my concern, is let's not think, AI and technology is not for now, it's not investable, it's not necessarily something we want to go forward, but how can we push it forward so that maybe next year it will be?
That's so great to hear. And what I hear from the four of you are really tangible aspects on the concern that we can do something about, because that's really what we are here for. The other aspect that personally concerns me a lot is how is the overall ecosystem readiness to absorb what we'll be developing, right? Because we are on the pinnacle of resources of innovation, and talking within this really network of people who are very tuned in to the value, but how to bring that out to the hospitals that still struggle with the Wi-Fi, to centers that still have to do with overall EMR devices and systems that are not updated. So that piece, to me personally, is one of the key concerns on the scalability of what we are trying to do. And I think that that's also a moment for us to reflect how our buildup can link to that and make it grow. And that leads us to our final question, and really time flies when we are up here, which is, so in 5 years from now, we are gonna look back, and what will we see? Right? What was the biggest change that happened in 5 years? We're not talking 10, we're not talking 20, just 5 years. That, remember when we were together at that summit at BMS discussing these things, how much it changed. Remember a time, we can say now that we were not with smartphones in our pocket all the time. So what will be the thing? What will change in 5 years? And I'll start with you, Miruna.
I'm actually going to go for something that I've been trying to figure out for many, many years in my career, and that is, I'm going to stick to the clinical trial space. I think clinical trials of the future are going to be completely different. So as we know, a lot of the patients that we enroll and that we target for enrollment are mostly at academic institutions. Academic institutions are pushing forward in their technology. So I think with digital twins and some of the other wonderful things, advancements that we're working on today, and many of our colleagues presented on in this session, I think that we are going to see an extreme advancement in that area. I think we're going to be able to enroll patients faster, better. We're going to be able to go to them instead of them coming to us, having to travel. I think in terms of the caretaker side, which we saw earlier today, that's going to be advanced quite well as well. We're going to be able to provide more services. And because of that, trials are going to get faster, cheaper, and better so that we can bring more medicines to patients faster. I believe that.
Great.
So I will stick with the language paradigm. I think we'll be multilingual in the ecosystem. We'll speak science, we'll speak software, we'll speak stochastic statistical models. And maybe at one point in time, the ecosystem will not need a translator, but is able to swiftly, have that conversation in the right language.
Yeah, and I'll sort of frame it more from an investor mindset here. I think in 5 years' time, particularly reflecting on time at BMS, say 5 years' time from now, I think, the way in which we do projects and the way in which we do product deployment, I think will merge. I think we'll be able to do far more with far less, for sure. And if we're not already, we should already be on the path for doing so, because you can build great companies with 3 people today that are worth quite a lot of money. But I also think one thing that we would become, which I hope we'll become, is financially literate as to the value of what we're building. I think one thing that we didn't hear as much today is value creation. And to me, value creation is in economic terms, outside, of course, the most obvious being patient benefit. But ultimately, is this a top-line mover? Is this a bottom-line mover? Is it real cost takeout, or is it just cost avoidance, masked in a different word? So I really think that I like the polylingual perspective. I think that's already happening in grad school between hybrid classes, and those graduates who are now graduating with polylingual as their basis will now be the future employees, taking us into a bright new world.
Yeah, thank you. What about you, Dan? 5 years.
I mean, hopefully a different presidential administration, if this one's willing to leave. I mean, guys, I'm trying to read the room here, but things are not okay in science and in health. And 5 years ago, some of you were trying to sell me blockchain solutions to problems in pharma. And I think that the current craze is going to go the same way. Blockchain found its place in fake money, and that's used for drugs, not your drugs, the illegal drugs, and speculation, and ripping people off. And large language models will find their place, and we won't be talking about them so much anymore. And I hope that the pendulum, if nothing else, the shock to the system of what's happening now will lead to some rebound where we get back to a rational administration of a scientific paradigm, where the universities that birthed the things we're talking about in such glowing terms have now been defunded and are in active fights with the government. We have to integrate the things we work on and think about with social realities, right? And so GLP-1s are awesome unless you're poor, and then you can't have them, right? And 2% of the population is on GLP-1s. We know what 1% of that 2% is, and it's the 1%. So let's, I think, be realistic that while the technology is great, our potential to measure the world is getting better, our ability to manage large data sets in meaningful ways keeps improving, unless we're contemplating what that means in the context of our societal realities, we're missing the point. Because there are a lot cheaper places to make people healthy than healthcare.
Well, thank you. With that, I really would like to thank the panel, Miruna, Mariann, Milind, for joining me here. It was a pleasure. And I'll take the opportunity to stay one more minute, a couple of more minutes. We are almost closing up. So there's just a short message. First off, a very, very big thank you for all of you here in the room, for all of our attendees that are online that couldn't make it here or didn't get a spot. We had the limited availability of invitations to be in person. So thank you. Thank you to Panagora that helped us to put this together. And a very special thank you to Lauren Sunshine and all the organizing committee. Thank you to the sponsors as well. As you can see here, it's very important that to have this sponsorship and very important to have the overall networking and the booths back there to have the one-on-one conversations and hopefully to create much more for the future. So with this, we're gonna transition to the outside networking session, but I'm gonna still pass the mic to Lauren so she can say the final logistic words. And again, see you outside and thank you very much.
Thank you. And yes, I don't want to hold anyone back from drinks and apps, but everyone can please join us in the large atrium. It's towards the back of the cafeteria near the patio, and we would love to keep the conversation going. So thank you so much for everyone who stuck with us today, and look forward to continuing to converse over some drinks.